Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ignorant Intellectual on Media. I haven't did a video in a while because there hasn't been much to do a video on. It's more and more difficult to find things to purchase, so I haven't been purchasing much. As I said in previous videos, a lot of what I'm purchasing is just replacements from, like if I have the DVD and I replace it with a Blu-ray, or I have a Blu-ray and I replace it with a 4K or whatever, right? So it's not a lot of new stuff comes in. But then every once in a while, what happens is you have like a streak of luck, and everything comes in at once. And it's like every time I went to the thrift store or checked on Facebook Marketplace or Kijiji, whatever, there was something there for me to pick up. So then just bam, 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 it happened all at once that I picked up a whole bunch of stuff. So it was time to do a video. All right, so here it is. So like usual, let's do the books first. All right, so first up is Camus' Les Justes, or Justice, or The Just. In English, basically, it's one of his best plays. It's this one's in the French language, but like I said in previous videos, I will buy books from French authors that are in the French language to resell, because those are the ones that do sell. A lot of the English authors or other authors, when that get translated into French, don't sell as well, but the original French authors in French language sell pretty good. All right, so that one's basically about what was like there was an assassination of a high political figure in the like just below the Russian Tsar back in 1905, before the revolution, and he basically explores that murder and the morality around murdering a political figure and stuff, right? So it's one of his more famous plays. All right, we have C.S. Lewis's The Grand Miracle. C.S. Lewis sells well on the secondary market. He's the guy that wrote all the Chronicles of Narnia, all the Narnia books, the 7 volumes of the Narnia books. But he's also wrote, he was a devout Christian, so he wrote a lot of religious books as well, and this is one of them. The Grand Miracle is one of his more famous essays on Christianity, and other selected essays on theology and ethics from God in the Dock. All right, so that's a paperback version of some of his essays. Spoken about this book numerous times, The Outsiders. I consider this probably the greatest young adult fiction book ever written, and it was written by a teenager. So if you haven't heard about this book, pick it up and read it and tell me any different. All right. Next up is Ludwig Wittgenstein. This is the only book that he ever wrote during his lifetime. All right, that was published during his lifetime anyway. So philosophical. He's one of the big names in philosophy. He basically said that you can solve any philosophical problem not through metaphysics but by logic, I think, if I remember correctly. Logical clarification of thoughts and proposed solutions of the most philosophical problems by means of critical method of linguistic analysis. All right, so not everything is so confusing, right? So all right, so I don't have a lot of room to do all this. All right, so next up is Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. This is a very popular book for he wasn't he like the emperor of Rome? Emperor of Rome in AD 161. All right, so and then he wrote down a lot of his thoughts on war, on politics, on everything, and he's continued to be read for like the next almost like more than 2,000 years, almost 2,000 years now, and continues to be read. All right, this is a newer version of the modern library. They're not the the gold and black versions of them that they put out. Mostly this one's actually red and black, so I wonder if they changed their marketing. All right, so and here we have one of the great books in first or second wave feminism, if I remember correctly. Simone de Beauvoir. It might be first wave, actually. Anyways, the second sex, basically about the condition of woman in society, and it's one of the ones that you will read if you take feminism in school, anyways, right? So it always sells. Oh, here's another. Here's probably C.S. Lewis's most famous book, Mere Christianity. All right, like other than his fiction stuff, this is his. This is basically he's a Christian apologist, and he tells you why Christianity is good and why you should follow it and so on and so forth. He goes quite deep into it, and it's probably his most popular nonfiction book. All right. Next up is Brave New World. I spoke about this numerous times, so I'm not going to speak about it again in this video. Then we have Eugene Onegin by Alexander Pushkin. Now, if you don't read Tolstoy or Dostoevsky, Pushkin is a guy that maybe you'll pick up. This is his first novel, and he wrote it like poetry. It's basically a novel written like poetry, but I don't know if the translation will ever grab that poetic sense as well as the Russian language did, but it's an interesting book to read anyways. Right? So if you like Russian literature, it's one you should pick up. Then we have Ralph Ellis's The Invisible Man. I think this was his first novel as well, published like back in 1950, the 50s at some point. And it's basically, The Invisible Man is the black man in the United States, and he has a central character that feels like invisible in society, and he goes about exploring like the psychology and the situations and sociological situations of the black man in the United States. I think it won a National Book Award or whatever. Now we got Siddhartha. This one found in hardcover, so that's kind of cool. Siddhartha is if you want your mind blown, read this. If you want your mind blown, there's a few books that you can read. Jonathan Livingston Seagull would be one. Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance would be another, and this one would be another. You will not regret reading this book if you read it, and it'll expand your mind. Right. Some of the funnest books to read are the books that you can read, and it's like you're on drugs without being on drugs. You know what I mean? That's how mind expanding the book is. Some people take drugs in order to expand their mind or whatever, but you can read some books, and those books will expand your mind without the narcotics. So that's Siddhartha, and we have the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. This is basically a translation of the Mao Wing Tui manuscripts, predating other texts by 5 centuries, translated with an introduction and commentary by Robert G. Hendricks. This is one of the most read Eastern, kind of like religious philosophical books in the West. All right, and another Eastern guy. This is Rumi, and Rumi is big in the West because he writes, mystical, religious kind of poetry, right? Philosophical poetry, right? It's quite beautiful to read, even in translation. So I picked up this nice hardcover. Should be able to sell that pretty good. Then I picked up 2 volumes of the International Collectors Library. This is popular with some people. This was like, if you couldn't afford the nice leather-bound editions, these are the editions that you go after because they're much cheaper, right? But they're made of paper stock and everything. That's difficult. But this one, I actually have it with the, because it doesn't have a dust jacket, and it doesn't have, any explanations on the back of it or anything, because it's like faux leather. What they do is they always put this thing in with it, but you rarely find these when you get one of these. When you find one of these books on the secondary market, and most of the time they're extremely damaged because they're cheaply made, right? Especially the top part and the bottom part, because the paper is always a little bit shorter than the actual hardcover, right? So what happens is you put it on a shelf and it bends it, and then it cracks because the leather isn't very, or the faux leather isn't very durable. Let's put it that way. So I had this one. This one is Don Quixote from Miguel de Cervantes, one of the great Spanish novels. And I picked up this one, Dubliners and a Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man by James Joyce. All right. And this one is in even better shape as the other one. And guess what? This one has it as well. So the reselling of these books will be quite easy, I think. And they're pretty nice. Oh, when you put them on the shelf, they look pretty cool. If you don't look at them too closely, they kind of look like leather-bound editions when you put them on the shelf. So that's why they were popular back in the day. Then I found this, Sherlock Holmes, the complete and unabridged novels. All right, so there was a bunch of shorter stories that he wrote also, but he had like 3 or 4 novels, right? So Study in Scarlet, Sign of 4, Hound of the Baskervilles, and The Valley of Fear are the 4 novels that he wrote about Sherlock Holmes. Doyle did, and you get a nice kind of hardcover, but it's kind of soft cover hardcover, so it'll bend and easy to read like a soft cover, but it's kind of like got more of a hardcover feel to it. So this isn't bad. I'll be able to sell that pretty good. All right, so I think that's all the books I had. Yes. Oh no, here's one right here. Henry James, The Wings of the Dove. I don't know much about it, but this book I haven't read it. But whenever I come across a Penguin classic, not the most recent covers of them, but the ones that are previous to it, which are these ones, they have this kind of like yellowish border to them on the front, and they're black and yellow, and they'll have a different color depending on what the book is, what the subject of the book is. They'll have a different color up here, and then you put them on the shelf, and they're all kind of uniform all the way across. So they're really nice editions, but because they're older, they're hard to find. They come in 2. They come in these larger versions. So let me get a paperback out to show you what I mean. So here's the size of a regular paperback, all right? And there's the size. So it's kind of like in between a soft cover or trade paperback and a paperback. But they also put these out in paperback versions. So when you put them on yourself, you kind of have the taller ones, and you have the shorter ones as well. So it doesn't look as uniform. So I'm not sure why I think maybe the book was a bit bigger, or maybe they needed more money, so they decided to print the books bigger so they can charge more. I'm not sure why, but this one is really nice. It's like brand new. So I picked it up. Yeah. Okay. So that's all the books. And I have some CDs as well, so let's do those. So I went into a thrift store the other day, and I guess somebody dropped off their Rolling Stones collection, because there was a bunch of Rolling Stones albums in there, but a lot of them were scratched, so I don't really buy scratched albums because I have most of the discography of the Rolling Stones on CD already. So when I do pick them up, it's usually to resell, but I found 4 of them that weren't scratched, and those are Made in the Shade, all right. Some Girls. So their best output is in the late 60s, early to mid 70s. So some of this is an early one of theirs, England's newest hit makers, the Rolling Stones, all right. And this one is probably their best album, although I think I like, no, I think this is probably the one that I like the most, which is Beggar's Banquet, all right. So this is the one that has Sympathy for the Devil, which is, that and Paint It Black are probably their 2 best songs. All right, so those are the 4 Rolling Stones albums I picked up. Not sure if I'll put it in one ad and sell it for maybe 20, or just put them individually for 5. I'm not sure. All right, so then I start looking around, and bang, bang, bang. All right, so I see this guy put up this thing. All right, so this is new. It hasn't been opened yet, and it's The Apartment, one of the great, like 1960s, 1950s, 60s. When did this come out? Early 60s, if I remember correctly, but I could be wrong. This is quite a funny and quite a it's like a romance as well. But if you haven't watched this, this is like Shirley MacLaine at her best. All right. So I have that one. It's basically new. And then I came across this one the guy put up. Now, I have this. Let's see if I can find it quickly or not. Yeah. I have this on DVD already, right? But like I said, you know how I'm not finding new stuff. Like this is basically a replacement because I have it on a DVD as well. So it's just replacing the DVDs with the Blu-rays is what I've been doing a lot lately, right? So this is basically the 4 Scream films, and if you haven't watched the Scream films, they're quite fun. You got those like 4. Basically, if you want to know like horror from like the 70s to the 90s, like the late 70s when the slasher films became popular, there's basically 4 franchises, right? You have the Halloween franchise, which came out with the first, main slasher one. I mean, you had Black Christmas and Psycho before that, and a couple other films. But for franchise stuff, Halloween came out in like '78. Then you had like Friday the 13th, and I think that was in 1980. And those 2 franchises kind of went forward. And then in the mid '80s, like 1984, if I remember correctly, that's when Nightmare on Elm Street came out, and then you had all the Freddy films, right? And then, in the late 80s, early 90s, that's when the Scream collection went out. So Wes Craven did all the Scream films and all the Nightmare on Elm Street films. So 2 out of the 4 franchises are done by Wes Craven, so he's one of the big names in horror. And I found it all on Blu-ray in one package. It's better than having them all and take up so much space, right? So that's really cool. I got it for $5. This guy was selling it for $5, so that's kind of crazy. And then I also found this Robert Rodriguez film, Desperado. I don't know. I watched this a while ago. I wasn't super impressed by it, but I did like it. And he had it in a nice Blu-ray steelbook, still with the L, what do they call it, the L card or on it. So, nice edition. So that'll increase my steelbook collection. All right. So I really like steelbooks, but what I really liked is when they're all put together and across, because they're all so uniform, but they're all different colors and everything, right? So they look really nice on the shelf. That's, I think, the attraction for everybody. And then I finally watched this movie that I've had for weeks. All right, and this is Paul Morrissey's Blood for Dracula. And I remember watching that when I was in my 20s. And I really enjoyed it because it was a film that put Dracula in a position where he's not the fiend or the horror dude and we have to go kill him type of. He's like a tragic hero, like like a Shakespearean tragic hero, right? It was like Shakespeare wrote the screenplay for this film, and it was basically. Now I thought when I recollect like 30-something years ago, I thought the film was basically, well, the premise and everything of the film is still the same. I wasn't wrong with that, but I got the details wrong with it. In that, I thought there was so basically the story is Dracula's in Romania, and he has to leave Romania, and he ends up going to Italy. All right. The reason why he leaves Romania and goes to Italy is because he can't find any virgin blood in Romania anymore, right? So he travels to Italy because Italy has the reputation of being a very religious country, right? And with religion comes chastity, right? So he figures he could find more virgins to suck the blood of, because in this version of Dracula, he can only suck the blood of a virgin. If he sucks the blood of any other person who's not a virgin, it's tainted blood and it makes him sick and he pukes it all up, right? So that's the problem with him, and he doesn't want to leave Romania, but he's kind of forced to leave because he's dying, basically. He's a tragic figure. He's not like a scary figure in this film. He's like a tragic figure like King Lear or whatever, or Macbeth or whatever, right? So then he travels to Italy, and there is a aristocratic family, but this is at the transition time where money totally leaves, the aristocracy and goes into the mercantile area, and all the merchants and all the businessmen are the ones that are rich now, and all the aristocrats are like poor. They only have names now, but they don't have money or influence, right? So, but anyways, there's a duke or whatever who has like three or four daughters. I can't remember now. I think it was four daughters and three daughters. Anyway, so Dracula looks at that as perhaps a good, um, you know, a fruitful place to explore. So he ends up, him and his assistant end up befriending this family, and he says he wants to ask one of the daughters for marriage, right? So, and they're all exclaiming that they're virgins, but they're not. Like two of the older daughters. So it was three daughters. There's like a younger daughter, and there's two older daughters, and they're both banging the help. Basically, there's a commoner that works at the estate, doing handyman jobs or physical labor or whatever they need, right? So, and he's like banging the two daughters, right? So, but they lie to the count, and basically the count attacks one, and then has a bad reaction because she's not a virgin. Attacks another, has another bad reaction because she's not a virgin. But I thought there was no virgins, right, in the film, but there's actually two. He gets the youngest daughter is a virgin, and there was this woman who was at the pub when they first arrived in Italy, who was also a virgin. So he did get to suck the blood of virgins, but I didn't realize that now, looking back on that film 30 years ago when I watched it, right? And I thought it took place in the 1960s because, there's this kind of, you had the mainstream, which was like free love and everything's beautiful and everything, but then you had like the backlash of the parents were saying, yeah, because of the invention of the pill, women now have, sexual freedom. They don't have to worry about getting pregnant as much, and they can like have premarital sex without responsibility, kind of thing. So I thought this film kind of was like Morrissey's reaction to that, in that wouldn't it be interesting to make Dracula a tragic figure because he can't find a virgin in the world anymore? So how Dracula ends up dying isn't because somebody puts a stake through his heart, but because he dies of a broken heart because he can't find love or blood, right? So it's like a critique on modern 60s, because the film did come out in the early 70s, so it's the perfect time to do that criticism on how the free love thing wasn't as good as everybody thought it was. You know what I mean? There was like the the spread of sexually transmitted diseases and everything else. It wasn't all that it was cracked up to be, and I thought maybe Morrissey was doing a critique on that, which he might have been doing, but it would have been more forceful if he didn't have virgins in the in other words, no matter where Dracula went, he just can't find a virgin. He ends up dying at the end because he can't find a virgin, right? But anyways, it's still a really fun movie, and it's kind of funny in a way because thinking of Dracula as a tragic figure is kind of unique, right? So all right, so that's that. And then I pulled this off the shelf, all right, and this is the Vengeance Trilogy, Park Chan-wook's Vengeance Trilogy. And I watched Old Boy a while back when it first came out. So when I found this, I bought it, and then I said, well, I pulled it off the shelf the other day because I wanted to watch Old Boy with my daughter. So, but that didn't work out because my 4K player in the basement is the one that can play Region B Blu-rays, right, or 4K. Well, most 4Ks are actually region free, but they can play Blu-rays from Region B, right? So we never ended up watching it, but I ended up watching it, and I ended up watching the first one, which is Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. I watched those two. I haven't watched Lady. That's the next one up. Lady Vengeance is the third one that's in the trilogy, right? So if you haven't watched Old Boy, an extremely good film, and then they end up doing an American version of it. I can't remember who directed it, which was very good as well. So if you want to avoid the subtitles, I guess you can watch the American one. But basically, Old Boy is about a guy who is drunk and he ends up getting picked up because of his drunkenness, and then he ends up getting kidnapped, and he ends up being stuck in this prison that looks like a hotel. He's fed through the door, and he can't leave this room, and all he has is a TV, and a bed and everything, but he can't leave, and he's stuck there for 15 years, and then he finally is released, but he doesn't know the reason why. It's kind of like, it's kind of like The Trial, isn't it? The Trial, remember The Trial by Kafka, where the guy gets charged with a crime that he doesn't know what the crime is, and he goes through the bureaucracy, can't figure out who charged him or what was the charge or anything. Kind of like that for 15 years, and then ends up getting free, and then what he's doing is he wants to hunt down his captor and kill him because he ruined his life, right? So it goes through that. I don't want to ruin the whole thing, but that's basically the premise. And then I watched Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, which is an interesting film as well, but that one was a bit difficult to watch in that Park has this interesting way especially with that film, of cutting away from scenes before the scenes naturally end, right? He's like doing it on purpose. Like the whole film was, I don't know if it's a criticism, maybe it's like better on a second watch. It probably is. It's probably a better second watch than it is a first watch. But basically the storyline is you have a brother who's a deaf mute and a sister, and the sister has kidney issues and she needs a kidney transplant, otherwise she's going to die. All right. So then the brother goes to the hospital because he's going to give his sister one of his kidneys, but he's not a match. All right. So then he sees these sticker posters up in the bathroom that illegal organ, black market organ purchasing, and so he goes to them to see if he can get an organ for his sister so she doesn't die. And they say, okay, it's going to cost $10,000 and one of your kidneys. You're going to trade one of your kidneys for a kidney that has the right blood match for your sister. And so he agrees to it. So he gives them the 10,000, and he goes under, and they take his kidney, and then they disappear. All right. So he's screwed out of his kidney, $10,000, and he can't help his sister, and his sister's going to die. And then the hospital calls and says, hey, miraculously, we found a kidney for your daughter. But that $10,000 that he had was for that operation when he thought he could give his kidney to his sister. But he couldn't, so then he used it for the black market. Now he doesn't have that $10,000 to pay for the actual operation at the hospital, right? So then his girlfriend suggests that they kidnap this girl. So he's working at a factory, the deaf mute is working at a factory, and then he gets fired from the factory. So his girlfriend says, hey, why don't we take revenge out on the owner of the business who fired you, and we'll kidnap his daughter. I mean, we won't hurt her or anything. We'll kidnap her and get that $10,000 that we need from him, and then we'll release his daughter, and then we'll have enough money to get your sister surgery, right? So they go ahead and do that. The sister finds out that the brother isn't actually babysitting this kid, that he actually kidnapped this kid, and she was already feeling guilty about the burden that she was putting on her brother already, and she just can't handle it, so she commits suicide, and then everything unravels, right? And it's just one vengeful act after another vengeful act and everything. It's like quite an interesting film in that there's two major things that you'll notice, and I notice, I don't know why, but I notice it more with foreign films than I do with homegrown films like American films or whatever. I don't notice like camera angles and other things. I notice it a lot more with especially Japanese films and Korean films. They tend to be more experimental with their camera work, right? And in this one, there's a lot of beautiful shots, I mean, I remember one shot where they're walking up the stairs, and then you have the silhouette of the, the triangle kind of the stairs and everything. And he has a tendency to do shots from above, which you don't normally see much, but you're seeing shots from above, right? And you're looking down on everybody, right? So you have that as well. And what he does is he edits his films strangely in that there'll be a scene going, and the scene is like maybe 3/4 of the way through, and then it cuts to another scene. And sometimes that scene, or most time that scene, by the end of that scene, all right. So there's some full scenes, but there's some cut scenes, right? So there's something that's happening, and then it stops, and you go, what? And then it jumps to another scene. But then eventually, the scene that was cut early gets explained later on. For example, there's a section in it where one of the vengeful things that happens is the deaf mute goes back and he finds the black market organ people, right? So there's a it looks like a mother and two sons, and these two sons are big and burly, and the mother is kind of like the one in charge. So he goes in, and he has a bat with him, and he clubs one of the brothers over the head and kills him, all right? And then it's in the basement, so he was upstairs at the door, so he clubbed him and left him there, and then he goes down into the basement, and the second brother approaches him, and he tries to club him, but the brother grabs the bat, all right? So then he picks the deaf mute up and is choking him like while he's raised up in the air, and then the deaf mute takes out a knife and stabs him in the neck, right? And then that guy dies. And then he's going towards the mother, and she opens up the drawer of her desk and pulls out a scalpel, all right? And then the scene ends, and you don't know what happened, right? So then another scene happens, and then the next scene you see this room when the police find the dead bodies and everything, and they're investigating it. So when you go down into the basement, down the stairs, you see the one guy and you see the other guy, and then you see the mom. She's lying back on the stairs with a scalpel in her hand like this, and she's dead. So then, because the next scene after the original fight scene is the deaf mute, he's got like a cut on the side of his stomach. All right, so you don't know whether she survived and he got out and he got a cut on the side from her, or what happened, or if that's because that's the same place where he had his kidney removed, right? So you're not sure, maybe he ripped it when he was fighting or what. But anyway, so when the police are there, you see that the mother is dead and she has a scalpel in her hand. She's leaning back against the stairs or whatever, right? So so then you figure out, yeah, he ended up killing her as well, right? But you don't figure that out until a couple of scenes later, right? So it's like you're following this this movie, but like there's all these scenes that get cut 3/4 of the way through, and then later on you find out what happened in that quarter that was cut out later on in other scenes, right? So it's an interesting way of storytelling. So, but you kind of had to get used to that, and so it's probably a really good film for a second view because you already know the whole storyline with it, and then you can follow it better. And another thing that's a bit confusing on, maybe it's because I'm Canadian or I'm a white person or whatever, but what happened was they wanted to kidnap the daughter of the business owner that fired him, fired the deaf mute, but they end up kidnapping her best friend, another little girl, right? And I'm not sure why that happened, but there was a reason why it happened. A bit confusing. And I didn't even realize that happened because the two girls look so similar, right? And I have difficulty with Korean faces, unless they're in front of me a while, and then I can, but some of them look similar. I know it sounds racist when I say that, but I'm not trying to be racist. Just they have similar faces, and sometimes you get confused on who's who, right? But Park ended up making the main character easy to recognize because he has his hair dyed green, right? So it's you know who that guy is, right? Because I confused the two daughters of the ones that got kidnapped, and I also confused the sister with the girlfriend, because I thought the girlfriend was the sister, and I thought it was the sister that suggested they kidnapped somebody, and then you're with the sister and she doesn't know anything about it, and you're going, okay, that's kind of confusing. Oh, he has a girlfriend. Oh, the girlfriend and the sister aren't the same person. You know what I mean? So that was a bit confusing as well. But the second watch, this movie is going to be much better, because the whole idea of it is really good, and following it easier the second time will make it really enjoyable. I mean, Exotica was that way. The Canadian film Exotica, where it was confusing how these different scenes were happening, and they're completely unrelated, but by the end of the film they all come together and are related to each other, right? So it was kind of confusing, but the second watch of Exotica was better than the first watch. Probably this one will be better in the second watch, right? Now, I haven't watched Lady Vengeance, but that's next up, right? So we'll do that. All right, so that's the trilogy, and Arrow put up a really nice hardbox edition of this, if you ever come across it. I really like them. It would be nice if they could do it a little bit. I mean, a lot of the Arrow boxes are large on purpose, because it makes it worth more, I guess, to people. But I would prefer if they had a smaller box and only have one Blu-ray case in it, and have all three films inside the one Blu-ray case, right? As per example, I'll show you now. So that is the Vengeance trilogy. All right, so here I also found this, all right, which is the girl with the dragon tattoo, and the trilogy. They call it the Millennium Trilogy because the newspaper in the three films is called Millennium, so they call it the Millennium Trilogy. Probably a little bit shorter than you'd say the girl with the dragon tattoo trilogy. But anyways, all three films are in here, all right, and it's like one case with all three films in it. I can't show you the film because I still have one over there, because I'm watching the third one. I just finished watching the third one. Hold on. Yeah, no, it fell out. That's why. All right, there we go. And it has the three. Right. So this is the thing that I like. Now, having it fold over or whatever, I prefer just to have a regular, case with 3 discs in it. But anyways, this is nice. So I had this trilogy already on Blu-ray already, but individual Blu-rays, and so this is going to save like it's half as wide as the 3 Blu-rays going across, right? So, and it's in a one box set, so that's always nice. So it saves me space. All right. And this, if you haven't watched it, if you don't mind subtitles, really good, actually. It's really the girl who plays the girl with the dragon tattoo, Elizabeth is her name in it. She's in all 3 films, and she does an extremely good job in this film. I mean, there's some really nasty stuff in this film when you watch it, so be prepared for that. But basically, she's like, yeah, she's kind of like, she's not super good, but she's not bad either. You know what I mean? She's just kind of fucked up because of all the shit that's happened to her. But it's an extremely good trilogy if you like it. Now, the first film was also made into an American version of it, and that was really good as well. I think that starred Daniel Craig, actually. And that was a very good film as well. But the original 3 films are really good. You get the problem in the first film, and then by the third film, everything is solved, and she's finally free of everything, and she can, go live her life, right? So, it's quite a good trilogy if you haven't watched it. All right, I dropped the bag on the floor because it's paper. You got to protect your stuff so it doesn't get damaged or scratched or whatever, right? So, all right. So then I found the guy that had this Desperado also had this one, which is Chinatown, on a nice steelbook as well. All right. Most people don't like that they put it directly, the steelbook, the information directly. They'd rather have it on a J card, and then they can pull the J card off, and you have nice artwork on the back. So this is probably not one of the best steelbooks out there, but Chinatown is an extremely good film. I don't know if you've watched it or not, but it's basically kind of like a film noir with Jack Nicholson as a private eye, and he's investigating. A woman comes and asks him to investigate to see whether her husband is having an affair on her, right? But that's all a setup for a murder and other things, right? I don't want to kill the film if you haven't watched it. I mean, it's from the 70s, late 70s or whatever. So if you've watched film, you've probably come across it. But if not, basically Jack Nicholson, one of his best performances. It's really good. I mean, he spends half the movie with a bandage over his nose, and it doesn't seem to bother his acting. So it's kind of interesting. But anyways, it's like a film noir, like a Sam Spade kind of film, right? So, all right. So next up is I found this Independence Day Insurgents, which is like the sequel to Independence Day. It happens 20 years later, and Roland Emmerich actually directed this one as well. So I picked it up because I collect Roman Elk. Now I watched the film and it was okay. The aliens come back, and they defeat them again, but it's a little bit different this time. You get to see the Queen, and the Queen is like, all these aliens are like insects or whatever, or they behave like insects. And so they have a queen, right? And the queen ends up on Earth, and she's like the size of I don't know, like a 5-story house, like a big. Anyways, that's her right there, if you can see it. But basically, I found this for like $5, so I picked it up. It has its slipcover. All right, so I'll add that to my collection. If I was to rate it, I'd rate it maybe a 6 on 10. All right, and this next up is this. I collect the indicator films, the numbered indicator films. All right, and I found this film. All right, still has its mini J card or whatever. Right, so Lips of Blood. All right, a film by Jean Rollin. All right, now this is number 407 in the Indicator collection. All right, so this is a Region B disc, right? So it's British, this one, but it's a nice box set. It has the film, all right, in a book form. And it has a booklet on it. But this is considered one of the great, vampire underground kind of vampire films. But this film sucked, man. I mean, it was like bad, right? I wouldn't even keep it in my collection. Except that it's part of the Indicator collection. It's number 407, so I'm going to add it to that. But man, the film was bad. It was about a boy who ends up getting lost, and he ends up. Hopefully, I'm not confusing this with another film, but I've watched probably 40 films since I last did the last video. Anyway, so he's a boy and he gets lost, and he ends up coming to this like old castle kind of thing, and there's this girl behind this cage. All right, so the door is like a cage door, and so he opens up the door for her, and she comes out, and she ends up inviting him in, and he ends up sleeping there for the night. And it turns out that this girl is a vampire. All right, now she doesn't do anything with the boy. The next morning comes and he leaves and he goes try to find his parents, and then it jumps forward like 20 years or whatever, and now he's an adult, and he's at this party for this man's perfume. All right, and on the ad for the perfume is that castle that he was at when he was a little kid, and he wants to go back to it because he wants to see if that girl is still there, right? So eventually, a whole bunch of little things happen. These 3 vampire women are there, and it's a bit confusing or whatever, but it's basically a boring thing going along, and by the end, he ends up back at that castle, and that woman is still there, and they kind of like get married or whatever. Anyways, it's like it's a brutal film. I don't know why anybody liked it or thinks it, why Indicator would take any attention to it, right? So, but like I said, it's number 407 in the collection, so I collect all the Indicators, which is what made me want to buy this in the first place. All right, and at the same store, they had a Criterion Blu-ray for like a really reasonable price, and it's number 982 in the collection. That's Hedwig and the Angry Inch, and the Angry Inch, which is basically about a transgender person who, well, you can't really consider them transgender because they don't think of themselves as transgender. They're uh, they're a uh, they're a man. They're living inside of East Germany, and he gets surgery to look like a woman so that he can escape out of East Germany, if I remember correctly, and um, and then he ends up becoming like a punk rocker or whatever, right? So, but there's more stuff to it, but that's basically it. So you can't really consider him transgender because you know, he doesn't feel uncomfortable in his body and thinks he should be the opposite sex. He knows he's a guy, but he did it for a political reason or whatever, and then he ended up anyway. So you watch it, and it's one of the more famous, if you could call it, transgender films, if you can call them transgender, if they're kind of forced into it rather than they want to do it, like something like oh, what was that film by Neil Jordan, The Crying Game? It's like it's not like The Crying Game where the man is actually behaving and dressing and acting like a woman, right? But pre-surgery, she hasn't had surgery or whatever. Anyways, so this one I didn't have, and now I can add it to the collection. I'm getting close to 600 of these now, the Criterions, I mean. All right, so that's Hedwig and the Angry Inch. Basically, the inch is basically what's left of his private parts after the surgery, right? So, all right, then I found this one, and these are, except for like the Criterions or the other ones, the numbered ones. Like, I don't know if Indicator ever put out. I think they put out DVDs before they put out Blu-rays, but I could be wrong on that. I know the Eureka Masters of Cinema, which is the third one that I collect. They came out with DVDs before they came out with Blu-ray, so I will collect the DVD that's part of that collection. But I also will collect these ones, these Turner Classic Movies. All right, this is like 4 films by John Wayne. So these ones, even though they're DVDs, all right, they've cleaned them up and they look really nice. Most of them, anyways. The ones that I've watched, anyways, they look really nice for a DVD. They're clearer than your average DVD. So I think they've done work on them. Is the only thing I can think of to make them look better. But anyways, 4 of his films. So this is probably like the 8th or 9th in this TCM collection that I have. All right, so when I come across them, I pick them up. I got this for $3, so it's not too bad. And then this came in the mail today. I spoke, I think, in my last video about testing out. There's a Facebook. When you're on Facebook, you can join different groups or whatever. And there's one, Criterion Canada, which basically is like a group of people across Canada that have buy and sell and trade Criterion Collection films. I'm part of it, but I've never really dived into like buying anything off of it because it's not local. You can't go pick it up. You have to trust the person who's going to mail it to you, right? So, so I decided to do it with 3 of them, right? And in my last video, if I remember correctly, 2 of them had come in by then, but the third one hadn't come in yet, right? And so I emailed the guy, text the guy and said, listen, I haven't gotten it. So he ends up finding it that they ended up returning it because he didn't have enough postage on it. And so the address that he uses, I think, is an old address, like his parents' address or whatever. So it ended up going there and he didn't realize it. So then he sent it out again. Now I was waiting another couple of weeks because it was coming in from from the East Coast, right? So it takes a few days, right? So so I was gonna text him again and say, hey, I still haven't got it, but then it came in today. All right, so okay, the guy wasn't ripping me off. So far, I'm 3 for 3, and then I did it again 2 more times, so I'm five of them. I'm 4 for 5 right now because 3 of the ones that came in yesterday that I ordered off. So now I'm just waiting for another guy who had 2 or whatever. I'm waiting for those 2 to show up. So the film that I'm talking about that was so late coming in is The Fisher King. All right, and this is an extremely good film. This is number 764 in the Criterion Collection. Nice Blu-ray. So this film is really good. It stars Jeff Bridges and Mork. Why do I always think of him as Mork, right? Anyways, you know who I'm talking about, right? Robin Williams. All right, so, and this is Robin Williams' best film. All right, he plays a crazy guy, and he does it really extremely good. All right, I don't want to wreck the movie if you haven't seen it because it's not one of the more popular films that people talk about, but it's an extremely good film, and Robin Williams just extremely good in this film. So if you're a fan of Robin Williams, you've probably already watched this, but if you haven't, you should watch this film. He basically plays a homeless street guy who has like delusions and everything. He's like schizophrenic, and Jeff Bridges plays this psychologist or psychiatrist that's trying to help him, right? So anyways, extremely good film. And that will be added to my collection of Criterions. Did I do all those? I have. Okay, so now we'll do the 3 that just came in yesterday, and that's Onibaba. All right. So some people are hesitant about getting DVDs, right? They say it's like a dead format. They're only collect Blu-rays. Like at some point, if you collect films, you may at the beginning collect DVDs, and then you realize that almost all the DVDs that you have a Blu-ray, and then you're just wasting your time because later on, when you find the Blu-ray, you're just going to replace it, right? So probably when I first started, when I hit about 5,000 films, probably about 3,500 of them were DVDs, and maybe 1,500 of them were Blu-rays. Okay, so now it's about even. I have about 3,000 DVDs and 3,000 Blu-rays because I have about 6,000 films now, right? So, but I keep replacing the DVDs with the Blu-rays. But the thing about me is I don't mind having the DVD because I may have an urge to watch that film, and then I don't have it if I'm just waiting for the Blu-ray, right? How do I know? It might be 2 years from now when I find the Blu-ray to replace the DVD. So if I come across a film that's on DVD and I don't have it on Blu-ray, then I'm going to buy it, and then I'm going to have it in my collection so I can watch it, right? So perfect example of that was I had the four Lethal Weapon films on DVD. It comes in that four favorites. I don't know if you've ever seen those. I don't know if I have one close by to show you, but anyways, it's 4 favorites, and then it's like, The Matrix. They had the trilogy of The Matrix with the Animatrix, and it was another one. They have the first 4 Nightmare on Elm Street. They came in DVDs, and there's like 2 discs that are double-sided on the inside. Anyways, I have those, and I had the urge to watch Lethal Weapon like 2 or 3 days ago, right? And so I watched Lethal Weapon, and I was on the second Lethal Weapon when I ended up, well, I'll show you, I ended up getting this. All right. Okay. So if I didn't find that, because, that I bought new off of Amazon because Amazon was having a spring sale and they were having like 30-40% off a lot of the stuff that's on it. And this thing ended up being less than $20. So, less than $5 a film or whatever. I said, I'll pick that up, right? And then so I replaced it with, replace the DVDs with the Blu-rays, right? So, but I watched Lethal Weapon because I had an urge to watch it before I ended up coming across that on the spring sale, right? So you never know, right? So with the Criterions, a lot of if you're going to collect a Criterion collection, you will be picking up DVDs because many of the films only have a DVD release. They don't have a Blu-ray release, right? So, and then if those blue DVDs go out of print, then it's out of print and they haven't replaced it with a Blu-ray. You're going to want to get the DVD, and if you can find it for a reasonable price, good on you, because sometimes those ones are more expensive than the Blu-rays. So, anyway, so this guy was selling 3 of them. For $15 each, all right, and that's Europa, the Lars von Trier film, all right, and this one is number 454, all right. Then you got Hopscotch, all right, starring Walter Matthau, and this is a Roger Niemi, is that how you pronounce his name? Film, Hopscotch, all right, and this is number 163 in the collection. So this is the original ones, all right. So if you notice, they changed them over time. This is the original where you have the Criterion collection with the line over the front. And you have bigger numbering on the spine, right? And you have that. So for example, there's one there. Here's another one. Has the Criterion on the top, has the bigger number, and then the Criterion going down, right? All right. So those are the original ones, all right? A lot of them actually came in like double size, similar, everything same, but they're double the thickness, and they have like two discs in them. Like this one has only 1 disc in it, all right, and so does this one. So they didn't think they probably couldn't find enough footage or interviews or whatever to make a second disc of extras, so they just put them on a single. All right, so we got Hopscotch and Onibaba. Who directed this film? Kaneto Shindos, all right. Onibaba and Hopscotch. And now these ones are the newer ones, so they have a smaller number, which is kind of irritating. I don't know. Can you see that? Well, if you have that on the shelf, a lot of them have lighter, but then they still have the white print, right? They're hard to see, especially if you're not in really bright light. They're hard to see the numbering unless you look really close, or you take your phone and put on the flashlight and put it up against it so you can see it well. These ones were much better that way. The numbering was much larger, right? See? All right, but anyway, so this is Europa, and this is after they made the change. So now you get the you get the line, the year, and then the line down here. It kind of wraps around the whole disc, and then it goes to the back. So it kind of wraps around. So that's the newer ones. They all look like that. See, here's the Fisher King. See, it's got the line there, and then it's got it on the spine, and then it continues to wrap around the back, right? So those are the newer ones. These ones are the original ones. All right, so I got 3 of them. So number 226 in the collection, number 163 in the collection, and Europa's number 454 in the collection, all on DVDs. Now, I don't mind the DVDs. I just want it in my collection because I'm trying to get the first 1,000, and then I'll work on the 200 or so after the first 1,000, but I'm trying to get the first 1,000. Now, if I do come across something that's like 1123, I'm still going to buy it, right? I'm still going to pick it up, but I'm concentrating on the first 1,000, all right? And I have like about almost 600 of them, all right? So so I got 4 more, all right? So let's talk about this. Actually, 5 more, because I got Hedwig and the Angry Itch as well, right? So, so I brought this one. I found at a thrift store the complete of Will and Grace, but all on the individual ones, not in like a box set or whatever. The 8 seasons for like $20 at a thrift store. You usually sell these like between $4.99 and $7.99 each individual one, of whatever season, like season 2 of Coach or season 4, whatever. They're always like $4.99 to to $7.99, depending on, I guess, the popularity of the series. But for some reason they priced these ones at $2.99 each, so I picked them all up, and it cost me like $24. And then I watched them all. And if you haven't watched Will and Grace, it's extremely good. It was like a kind of like a groundbreaking series that from the late '90s to the early 2000s. It lasted 8 seasons. It's basically, the reason why it was kind of groundbreaking is because you have like, it's basically a gay comedy, right? Where the main male character is gay, and he has a roommate who's a Jewish girl, and they're best friends. But his other best friend is another gay man, right? So 2 out of the 4 characters, and then you have this rich woman that kind of hangs out, who works for the Jewish lady or whatever, right? So, but there's 4 main characters. 2 of them are gay men, right? And that was like the progression. Like, you didn't have, I mean, you had gay characters in shows and things like that, but you didn't really have like the main starring character as being gay. Now, so there was a lot of gay issues in the film, and man, it was like in, because like, you know, you had a lot of, like, George Clooney was in it. I think Brad Pitt in it. I can't remember, but Woody Harrelson was in it. Harry Connick Jr. I mean, it was like the guest appearances and people that frequented the show were like, you know, like heavy actors. You know what I mean? Like, usually you don't have that kind of star power to attract these people that they want to come on, you know, and do like 2 or 3 episodes or 1 episode or whatever. Do you understand what I mean? To come onto a show like that, especially since it's on TV and it's not in a movie or whatever, right? So it had like a lot of star attraction. So it was like an in thing, but it was quite funny as well. I picked it up and I was watching The Big Bang Theory, and I finished watching The Big Bang Theory, and then I watched this again, right? So, and you know, I watched the series when it came out originally, right? So, and I said, hey, that would be fun to watch again. So I picked it up and I watched it again, and it wasn't as good as The Big Bang Theory, but it was pretty close. All right, so if you haven't watched Will and Grace, it's quite. And then they ended up having like a reunion, and they rebooted the show again, and I think there was 3 more seasons, but I haven't been able to find those, and I haven't watched them. All right, so that's Will and Grace. All right, we got all that. Got those. All right, so yeah, let's do this one. All right, so Amazon was having a 30 to 40% off spring sale or whatever, and they had this for like less than $20. This is the thing that goes on the back of it, but you know, it's there already, so I'm not sure what the point of that was. But anyway, so all 4 films in one Blu-ray case. This is what I like. This is, rather than having it really thick, it's thin, and I have them all on DVD right now, but now I have them on Blu-ray. I can replace it, right? So if you haven't watched the Lethal Weapon series, it's basically, you know, a cop buddy series of 4 films where you have Danny Glover, the veteran black cop, and you have the crazy white young cop. Danny Glover is like a career police officer, but Mel Gibson is like a special forces. He's the Lethal Weapon. He's like a special forces guy that works on the police force. But he kind of has a death wish in a way, especially at the beginning, because he lost his wife. And you go through four films, and all 4 films are good. And then, you know, as the series goes along, Joe Pesci ends up on it, and Rennie Russo ends up on it as well. So you get some added characters in there that are kind of fun, especially Joe Pesci does a really funny job in this film. He's like a policeophile or whatever. He loves the police, right? Anyway, so it's quite enjoyable. The first film is probably the best film, and that's basically, you get to see Gary Busey as a bad guy, which is kind of interesting before he went crazy. And basically it's about them two, you know, they're just meeting, right, and them becoming friends and everything, and him not killing himself because he kind of looks at Danny Glover's family and kind of becomes part of that family, so he doesn't feel so alone or whatever. But anyways, it's quite a fun film. The buddy cop films that, like Rush Hour and all that, they're always fun to watch, right? So Lethal Weapon is one of the better buddy cop films if you haven't seen it. All four of them, anyways. And it comes in actually a nice hard box case, so it's well protected. I'll have to put some plastic around it, so to keep it nice, right? So under $20 for that, so it's really good. And then this was also on sale as well, and this is Kino Lorber, and they have a series. Kino has a series called the Cult, Kino Cult. This is number 4 in the series. I don't collect that series, but I thought I'd pick this up because it had a pretty good rating for a cult film. Cult films are like attractive as curiosities kind of thing. You know what I mean? But then every once in a while you come across a film that's like low budget but still really good. You know what I mean? Like the first Mad Max film, right? It was pretty low budget, but it was a pretty good film. That kind of thing, right? So I thought maybe I'd take a chance on this one. It's called Sinner. I don't know much about it. All I know is that was number 4, and I said, okay, I'll pick it up, see what this Kino Cult series is like. All right. Then I watched this series with my daughter, the Godfather series. All right. So it also comes in one case, all 3 films in one case, which I really liked. All right. So this is the Coppola restoration, so the films are a bit longer or whatever. But the first 2 are like 2 of the greatest films ever made, right? I actually hadn't watched this in such a long time. I was of the opinion that I liked the second film better than the first film because it has Robert De Niro as a young Vito Corleone, and you see how he develops into the Godfather or whatever. I always thought that was kind of interesting. But now watching it like 20 years later or whatever, I kind of like the first film better than the second film now. So it's kind of like there is a point when a person says to you that when you watch a film, how you feel about the film and whether you like it or how much you like it depends on your age a lot of the time, right? Or situation that you're in at the time, right? So it seems like when I first watched the 3 films, the third film came out in like 1990 or whatever, so that was kind of like an afterthought. But the first 2 films, when I watched them back in the late 70s or whatever, early 80s, the first film was good, but I liked the second film better because of Robert De Niro, right? But now watching them 30-something years later, I like the first one over the second one, right? So after the Godfather trilogy, also found this, all right? Il Generale della Rovere. Right. This is a Roberto Rossellini film, if I remember correctly. Yeah, Roberto Rossellini film. It's the reason why I picked it up. I don't watch a lot of European cinema because it's like they have a different brain than North Americans, if you know what I mean. What their taste is different, right? The way they approach film is different. It's like I don't know how to explain it. It's like more auteur or intellectual or less action oriented, more drama oriented, right? And some of it's lost on me, not growing up in Europe or being around. Europe is such a small area with like 500 million people in it, and everybody's pretty close together. There's so many countries in it, and they're all small. I come from a country that's like the second largest country in the world, and there's like maybe 30, 40 million of us. You know what I mean? All spread out. So it's like that. The mentality in Europe is just a bit different. You know what I mean? So their filmmaking is a bit different. Rossellini, the Italian director, one of the great Italian cinema directors. I picked this up because of his reputation, and I had it on DVD, but I hadn't watched it yet. So this is a nice Blu-ray edition of it. So I said, okay, I'll pick this up. All right, and this is a Raro video. cinema art visions. Right? So we'll eventually watch that. Um, what else do we? Oh yeah, okay. So when I was looking and I found the Lethal Weapon, um, no, that was an after. Uh, how it worked was I was on Facebook Marketplace and they had this one. All right, I saw this one. A gentleman had this one, The Boy and the Heron, $45. It was new, so he had bought it or whatever he did with it. And he hadn't watched it yet, and then I guess he's selling a bunch of his movies. Maybe he needs money. Anyways, this was one of them, 4K Ultra edition of The Boy and the Heron, but he wanted $45 for it. So I'm going, $45 seems pretty steep, even if it is a 4K, because when I'm on Amazon looking at things, most of the Studio Ghibli stuff, in Steelbook, nice Steelbook versions, they put out a bunch of, I don't think all of the Studio Ghibli, but a lot of the Studio Ghibli they put out on Blu-ray, on Steelbook Blu-ray, right? And those are usually around, $30. They're selling them for around $30 new, right, on Amazon, except for Grave of the Fireflies. That one is just outrageously priced. If you ever come across it, it's like, I don't know how much, like in the hundreds of dollars, right? So, but anyways, all the other ones are like around $30 new, right? So 30 is a bit much for me to pay, but so I saw this and I said, I wonder how much Amazon is selling this, and so I went on Amazon and it was less than $45, So I wonder if I should inform the guy, right? I said no, he probably knows, and since it's new, he thinks he could sell it for around the same price that Amazon's selling, even though Amazon was under $40 for it, right? So, and then because of the spring sale, it was even cheaper. So, and then I looked, I said, okay, if this one's cheaper, I wonder if they're putting sales on the other Studio Ghibli ones, the ones that I don't have, because this guy, going back to like a couple of years ago, he had a bunch of them, like 8 or 10 of them he wanted, he was selling, and I talked them down to about $10 each for each one of them. So I have like 8 or 9 of them, like 10 of them already, and then I picked them up occasionally or asked them as gifts or whatever. So I've expanded it. I think I probably have like 15 or 16 of them now that I've purchased more of them just right now. So I think I have almost the whole collection. But so I looked on Amazon, and yeah, all of them were like 30% off, 30% off, right? And they're all under $30, closer to $20, like between $20 and $30. And I said, okay, I'll splurge, right? I did a bunch of sales and everything. I had a few bucks that was eating out of my pocket. Like I said, it was a good amount of time that I didn't find anything to buy, but I was still selling stuff, so the money was piling up. So I said, hey, why not do a bit of a splurge? So what I did was I went through all the Studio Ghibli Steelbooks on Blu-ray or 4K that Amazon had for their spring sale, selling them, and I found this one, The Boy and the Heron. All right. I didn't have this one yet, The Wind Rises, so I picked that one up. And My Neighbor Totoro, if you haven't watched this one, I have not watched these two yet, but I have watched this one numerous times with my son. It's an extremely good film if you haven't watched it. It's like full of wonder, and if you watch it with your child, they'll be eyes wide open and everything. It's quite an impressive film. All right, and I didn't have that. Then when Marnie was there, I hadn't watched this one yet, all right, but I didn't have it. And From Up Upon Poppy Hill, I didn't have this one, all right. So I found five of the steelbooks that I didn't have. So I think I have like 15 of the films on steelbook, either Blu-ray or 4K. All right, um, so that'll look good on the shelf, and I'll watch those with my son. And last but not least, I found this yesterday. I found this So there's this one guy that was selling this for $100. Now, if you go on Amazon, oh, this is the Game of Thrones, the complete set on Blu-ray. All right. If you go on Amazon, this is close to $200. All right. You go into, like, we have like one retail store now that sells, like physical media. All right. I can't remember the name of it. I've mentioned it in previous videos. And they had this one, and it was like close to 200. No, and on Amazon it's like 169 or something, right? Expensive stuff, right? So I've been looking for it for a while because actually I have it on DVD. I have the complete series on DVD. So there was this one guy. So every time I look on Facebook Marketplace or Kijiji on it, everybody wants like $100, $120 for the thing. I'm going, I'm not spending that much on that. You know what I mean? It's just a ridiculous price. So then this one guy had it for 80, and I went, okay, 80, yeah, you're starting to get, like, there's 8 seasons, $10 a season. If it's on Blu-ray, yeah, maybe I would like it a bit less. But then another guy put it up for 65, and I went, okay, I'm sold. 65 is good. So I ended up buying it, and like $65 for this. So it's like a nice box set. It has this slip cover, wide, big square slip cover. And then you have each of the seasons. A nice hard box set from HBO, right? So that's cool. So I think I'll probably, right now, up in my bedroom, I'm watching Friends. I'm on season 5 of Friends, and once I finish that, I think I'm going to watch. I found Soap. I don't know if you remember that '70s show, Soap. It's like a spoof or a satire on daytime television, right? Soap operas. So I think I'd watch that. I watched that when I was quite young, and a lot of it went over my head, but a bunch of it didn't. A bunch of it was quite funny, and you have, Billy Crystal made his debut basically on that show. And anyways, it's quite funny. So I thought maybe I'd see how funny it is now that I'm in my 50s or whatever, right? So I'll probably watch that next. In the basement, I'm watching Fear of the Walking Dead. I'm on season 1 of Fear of the Walking Dead. So, but I think after whichever I finish first, the next thing I'm going to do is probably going to watch Game of Thrones again on Blu-ray. If you haven't watched the Game of Thrones, basically it's like King Arthur's England put to film, but everybody's competing. All these different families are competing for the throne of Westeros. Westeros is an island, and there's like 5 kingdoms or 7 kingdoms. Can't remember, 8 kingdoms within it, and then one person rules all of it, right? So it's quite a really addictive show. If you start watching it, you're going to watch it all the way through. And the acting is superb, and the amount of money they spent on these episodes to make everything look so real, extremely good. And yeah, the stories are quite impressive, based on the books, Fire and Ice by whatever his name. I can't remember his name is. Anyway, so yeah, so it's a quite a good series. You come across some series that are good and really good, and every once in a while you get one of these ones like, The Wire. You ever watch The Wire? Or Breaking Bad is another one. I really like Justified. I don't know if other people like Justified, but like Lost would be another one. Battlestar Galactica. These shows, they're not irregular shows. They're just like a cut above it, right? You can tell there was like a dedicated high budget for a lot of these shows, right? So, anyways, Game of Thrones is extremely good if you haven't watched it, and I think that's everything. So, lots of stuff. Eh? It was like for weeks I couldn't find anything, and then bam, within the last 3 or 4 days, all of this stuff, right? So, quite funny how life works sometimes. Anyways, if you like the video, leave me a thumbs up. Think about subscribing. I would enjoy that, and I will see you in my next video. Bye for now.